Hi, I already mentioned Pietro, my brother, in a few paragraphs ago, alluding to him as my first brother, only 2 years younger than me. I don't remember for sure the nature of our relationship during our early years, but I suppose it didn't have to be very different from what any pair of siblings from the one of any pair of siblings with a minimal age of difference, with a minimal difference of some years between them. Until recently, on one of the walls of the house, there was a photo of me and of him, who was just born at the time, and we hugged each other in front of the camera. And this photo was displayed on the wall of our house. According to what my mother told me, I was very affectionate and even protective of Pietro. Well, how can a 3, 4, 5-year-old boy be with his younger brother? It was almost natural to me. Um, My mother, as she told me about my affection for my brother, appeared to be closed in a world of nostalgia, from which her firstborn is now completely disappeared, has completely disappeared, replaced by an insensitive monster. I actually always hated my brother in reality. I believe he was one of the first victims of the resentment that was instilled in me by my father's violence. I hated Pietro to the point of wanting to remove him at any cost in the years following his entry to elementary school. I realized that he saw me as a point of reference in the absence of a father figure. And as a result, I was seized with a strange jealousy. I didn't want him to have a substitute for his father. When I, since I haven't had any father at all, my father humiliated, beaten, and insulted me alone. Consequently, my brother Pietro had to be humiliated and insulted too. Never beaten except in a few hysterics of my childhood, by his elder brother that who was me. So he had to be insulted by me since I was insulted by my father. It's very strange and unnormal. I know that. I admit it. I didn't want him to follow me, to have me as an example. I did not want him to imitate me. I didn't want him to look for me. Starting from early adolescence, I was no longer able to contain an inexplicable hatred of myself in the first person, and which then led me to the definitive interruption of any form of contact with him. I don't think Pietro was too unpleasant as a person, even if I exaggerated his flaws inside me. Of course, his character has always been inclined towards the pragmatism, the superficiality and the materialism of my mother. Um, like my father, I have increasingly leaned towards irrationalism, passion, and extreme temperamental volubility. At its most And I associated to my brother my mother's coldness and sinuses. Um, so my hatred was exacerbated towards him. I like to think that my brother was just an outlet for my frustrations. As a substitute, he was a substitute for every little victim of mine in the outside world. Of course, we also spent together a childhood full of games and fantasies. In any case, I am glad to have spared him more pain and incomprehensible suffering with my volunteer withdrawing into an impenetrable and thorny shell. So let's talk about the games we played when I was a child. Even in Milan, even if Duffy was so young, Pietro was my first playmate. With him, my irrepressible impulse to imagination, creativity, and invention found expression, which is still my anchor of grape among the waves that devastate my material life on all sides. I have a very specific memory during our childhood in Milan. He and I, as usual, embraced close together, hooked each other closely under the table in the living room, staring at the opposite wall with the shutters closed. Outside was broad daylight. Only a few tenuous rays of light filtered through the shutters, creating a play of reflections, ghosts, rainbows, a small shade of grey on the immaculate wall. I think I was 4 or 5 years old. I wanted to convince Pietro at all costs that this was an open-air cinema, and that who knows what beautiful new films were being shown. One of those that was yeah that was set in a magical and surreal place, of which I had heard someone speaking of remotely. It was a place equipped with large screens and large audiences that were always busy. I told Pietro the story, the characters confused in the shadows, the most memorable deeds. For some reason, he had the quirk of sitting upside down, with his back to the longed-for world. Pietro obviously didn't understand a word of what I was saying, but it was also important to me just to have someone listen to me as I recited my fantastic invention. Other games consisted in the inevitable drawings, piles of colors, or all the freak sheets that we found in the house, and then in the memorable battles of jumping on the sofa, which we even broke through with our euphoria. Good times now past, those in which, however, the germ of my sick fantasy was already hidden. I should have said morbid fantasy, but the previous objective clearly indicates the role it played in the processing of my subsequent emotional traumas. For some strange imaginary leap, instead of concentrating on escaping the fakeness and the violence of those around me, I focused on myself, to the point of sinking into an abyss made up of imaginary beings. Epic deeds imprinted in my mental cinema, daily creations that absorbed me to the point of alienating me from the world around me. Throughout my childhood and also later, I increasingly isolated myself in a thousand games of fantasy that most excluded any toy, created expressly to stimulate the playful activity of the child. All I needed was a pencil, a bottle of wax colors, a roll of napkins, a cotton thread tied to a stick, to create stories an hour more long. I told them to myself, my eyes fixed on the void, until my mother came to shake me up to force me to continue my own work. One of my father's obsessions was that I didn't mistreat objects. Objects sense if you hurt them, treat them as if they were people, otherwise they suffered, he told me, trying to frighten me and induce me not to mistreat pens and notebooks so that they would not harm them financially. To these objects, real or imaginary, I consequently began to give voices, behaviors, acts, and decisions of their own. It enchanted me so much to imagine a world in which chairs, tables, ceilings, buildings, clothes, streets, and cars would talk, play and quarrel. Everything was talking, everything was moving even without the knowledge of me, who desperately wanted to surprise the sofa, in up snorting under the pillows. I myself was made of autonomous organs, free thinkers and often in league with each other to spite me. Hands, legs, spleen, and brain all tinkered and lived a life of their own, making my existence too crowded for me to take care of, even what had to offer me. So I think it's enough for today. In the next video, I will talk to you about my passion for dolls and of the first signs of my transgender identity. Thank you for listening to me and see you in the next video.